Hi, welcome to Jazz Riff-a-Day. Today we're going to tread into a little deeper waters, talk about a little jazz theory and some jazz scales. If you are primarily a rock and roll or country or blues musician, you could probably get by really successfully just knowing a blues scale or pentatonic scale, both things I've talked about in previous Jazz Riff-a-Day videos. You might want to throw in a couple other hot licks in there, and that'll get you through just about all gigs you would want to play as a rock or country or blues musician, at least on a local level. However, if you're going to be a jazz musician or a bebop musician, you have a little more work to do. It gets a little more complex. And so what we're going to talk about today is two scales that'll cover 80-85% of what you need to know as a jazz musician. Right? Two scales to rule them all, if I can borrow a phrase from J.R.R. Tolkien. The first scale is your major scales. No surprise there, right? You need to know your major scales well in all 12 keys. So B flat major scale. Now, if that's all you can do with major scale, then you really haven't learned them. When I say learn your major scales, I mean be able to fluently bop around a little bit on them, be able to play some intervals, be able to play some rolling patterns, really feel comfortable with them in all 12 keys. So you'll be able to do something like that in all 12 keys without stressing out about it. Good thing is, once you learn your major scales, that will fit well over 3 chords. In jazz and other song styles, we have what's called a 2-5-1 chord progression. The 2 chord is based on the 2nd note of the scale, the 5 chord is based on the 5th note of the scale, and the 1 chord is the root or the main key you're playing in. So if I can illustrate here with guitar, if you're in B flat, key of B flat, the 2 chord would be C minor 7, the 5 chord would be F7, and then the 1 chord would be B flat, a major of some sort. So in time it would sound like this. So if you're going to play on that, you could play a B flat major scale over all 3 of those chords. So it might sound like this. Alright, I'm not going to win any Grammy awards with that, but it does fit. All the notes work, and it'll be great, right? Other versions of that, I'll play a couple more versions of that, and when the video's done in post-production, I'll put some piano chords underneath so you can hear what it sounds like with chords. But this might be another way to play that too. You don't have to be that notey. You can choose fewer notes and it'll still sound fine. 2, 3, 4. Alright, so like I said, if you can learn your major scales, that'll cover probably 80-85% of what you encounter as a jazz musician. Sometimes when you're playing a gig, the piano player or the guitar player will alter that 5 chord a little bit. Change a couple of notes on it, and it's actually called an altered chord. So instead of this, you might hear this, or something like this. And in those cases, you would use another scale that's the 2nd scale I'm going to teach you today, and that's called the Diminished Scale. So on those altered 7th chords, you could play a diminished scale and it would sound great. You don't have to actually be able to pick out each individual note that they're altering, because if the chords are going by at a rapid pace, that's going to be really tough to do. But if you can throw a diminished scale there on those altered seventh chords, it'll sound great. And the diminished scale is half step, whole step, half step, whole step, all the way up and down. The neat thing about it, unlike the major scales where you have to learn 12 of them, diminished scale, you really only have to learn 3, because each one of those will cover 4 different chords. So the diminished scale sounds like this. Or a little more up to speed. And you want to try to learn that in whatever, when you're practicing, you just start on a note that's comfortable, learn that, maybe a couple octaves, and then go up a half step and learn that one, and then go up a half step and learn that one, and that'll be your 3 diminished chords that'll work over all 12 dominant 7 altered chords. So practicing, you do this. And then go up a half step. And then up half step again. So if you're playing, say, in B flat, and there was an altered 7th chord, it might sound like this. So I'll play the diminished chord on the 7th chord, on the 5 chord. 2, 3, 4. Or another example. Now there's also another situation called a minor 2-5-1, which sounds a little different. Diminished scale will work pretty good on that as well, although there's other options that probably work better, but that'll at least get you started. So a minor 2-5-1, instead of being this, will be this. So the minor, the 2 chord, instead of being a minor 7, will be a minor 7 flat 5. And then the 5 chord would be something altered. And then down to the back to the tonic, which in this case is a B flat minor 7. So in time it might sound like this. So I'm not going to play any examples on that. You can research that yourself. But if you know the major scales and you know the diminished scales, that'll cover 90-95% of what you need to know as a jazz musician. For the rest, you can pick up this resource, which is called the Jazz Handbook, and it's published for free by Jamie Abersol, who makes play-along recordings. And this has pretty much everything you need to know to play at even the highest levels of jazz. The neat thing about this book is it's got a lot of stuff. It's got patterns for practicing. It's got a chart to tell you how to make each scale in terms of whole steps, half steps. It's got something called a scale syllabus. So if you come across a chord you don't know what to play on, this will tell you which scales work best with each chord. It has suggestions for practicing. It's got ear training exercises. It's got some exercises for bass players, bass clef. He talks about articulation in here. He talks about the cycle of force. I mean, it's a small book, right? But there's so much information in here. When you get it, you'll probably be a little overwhelmed. So the good news is you don't have to learn this all in one day. This book was not designed to be learned in a week, a month, even a year, right? When you get it, you look at it, you take the stuff that makes sense to you and you can use, practice that, come back to it some other time, and you keep referring to it over time. But seriously, if you knew everything there was to know in here, you'd be set for life as a jazz musician. Now, I said it's everything you need to know. It's not necessarily everything there is to know, because there's a lot of different methods out there, a lot of different jazz theory, a lot of different excellent books that you can keep building on things. But for free, this is a great start. I don't think they produce it in hard copy form anymore. When I was a kid in school, you could send Jamie a letter and say, "Hey, can I have your free book?" And he'd send you one of these out. But now it's a PDF download available on their website, and I'll include a link for this just in the description below this video. All right, a lot of stuff to practice there. I hope that works for you. And so get busy, have fun with it, and we'll see you next time.